Welcome, everybody, to the Just Add Bourbon podcast. I'm Jimmy Don Kerr,
I'm Brad Broadus.
I'm J.D. Dammer.
and it is another beautiful Sunday evening here in the hills of Eastern Kentucky. We've got another great show for you this week, and we're actually doing another interview. Oh,
What's wrong?
I don't know. It's repeating back in my ears.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's weird. Hang on.
I can't hear it. It's not repeating back to me. But anyway, got another great show. Got another great guest. All the way from
I know we're good.
Yeah.
Manchester, England, yeah. Yeah. Do I go? Yeah.
Yeah, he's doing.
Well, my name's Glenn Fleming, and I'm from England, as you can tell by the accent. I've spent 40 odd years in graphic design, and these past 12 years I've been publishing magazines and writing books, creating comic characters, making documentary films, which I think we'll get to in a bit, and just trying to have a good time, basically. But yeah, I've done pretty much through my career. I've pretty much done what I wanted to do. I've done a lot of traveling around the world, spoken to a few people, seen a lot of places, and just trying to have a good time.
Nothing wrong with that. So you was telling us before we come on the show that you spent some time in the U.S. How much time was you?
I've been to America about 20 times. So I've been to coast, all through, obviously all through the middle. I've been most places, Florida, Louisiana, Texas, California, New York, all over.
And even through Kentucky. What was your favorite place in the States that you visited?
Say again, sorry.
Your most favorite place that you visited in the States?
New York. I've been to New York about 12 times. It's a fantastic place. I don't know whether you've been, but it's brilliant. Best place on earth.
Yeah, I've been up there. I've worked up there a little bit too, and
Right.
I love New York. I love the diversity that the city brings. A place like New York, where there's just all kinds of people there, and
Yeah.
just doing their own thing, and nobody cares. About.
One of the biggest impressions I got from the States, and still do, is the way that, in my opinion, it's probably each state is its own country. The way people are, certainly Texas. The Texans I met don't think they're Americans. They're just Texans, But it's just New York's the best place.
My buddy that I was telling you about that I worked with in Texas from Manchester, he's still amazed that you can get on a plane and fly 8 hours and still be in the U.S.
That's right. Yeah. Well, they flew over the Atlantic to New York and then took the same time to get to California. So I know what it means. Yeah, it's crazy. It's a big place. It's a great place.
Jimmy Don, you doing okay over there? You look like you're struggling, brother.
Sorry, I didn't get that.
Well, Jimmy Don, he looks like he may be struggling a little bit over there.
All right. Okay.
No, I am struggling. Like it's playing double my ear. Like I can hear us talking, but then it's repeating whatever we say in my ear. I can't figure out why.
Well, we can't hear it, so.
No, at the moment I'm publishing a magazine. Is that the right way around? It's the wrong way around on my screen. Can you read that? Comics Unlimited.
Comics Unlimited, yeah.
That's just published this month. It's a bi-monthly 100-page thing about comics. Lots of articles, interviews, all sorts of stuff.
So that looks like it's a breakdown of like certain comic books or something. What is that?
Yeah, what it is, it's several people who work for me write me articles about their comics and different comics. There's a couple of interviews with we've got Guy Dorian, who's an inker at Marvel and DC. Got an interview with him, and we just have a great time putting it. I put it all together. I design it all. I put it together, and I've written a couple of articles as well. And I've even got a strip in there somewhere. There's one of my strips there.
Okay.
So that's what I'm doing at the moment.
All right, I think I've got this fixed, and so now I'm ready. I don't know what we talked about, but this is pretty much in my wheelhouse. And one of the things that I wanted to get into was I know that you have met Jack Kirby a couple of times.
Yeah.
And I think maybe even did a documentary on Mr. Kirby. And, to me, he's one of the I mean, he's just one of the top. I mean, he is, if there was a Mountain Rushmore, Jack Kirby would definitely be on it.
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about Mr. Kirby and what it was like to meet him, and just then I'll have 100 follow-up questions. So
who he is first, because
okay. Well, I first met Kirby in 1965 in the comic book. All right, not in person, in the comic book. Came across his work when I was about 10, and so obviously through that, reading all those Marvels and following his career, I always wanted to meet him because he's the best. He's just the best. Anyway, I stopped reading comics when I was about 17. I went to art college and grew up a bit maybe and did a few other things. And then in the 80s, I heard that there was a convention in London and he was going to come over. And I wasn't even sure whether he was alive or not. But obviously he was. But he didn't come to that convention. Something went wrong and he didn't come. But a couple of years later, I met some Americans from California. And I just happened to mention this place called Thousand Oaks, where I knew Kirby lived. And the guy that I met said, "Oh, that's just up the road from him. He lived in Anaheim." And well, being an American, you'll know that everywhere's about an hour away. That's what he said. It was about an hour away. It turned out to be 2, but there you go. So when we came back off holiday, they sent us a letter, and it had Kirby's telephone number in it. And I thought it was a joke. I thought, this is crazy. I thought it was a joke. So I came home from work every night and I looked at this letter and I looked at this number and I thought, this is a joke. And I thought, if I ring this number, it's going to be quite an expensive joke. Anyway, so I didn't ring it for a couple of weeks. And then my partner at the time got a bit sick of me reading this letter every night. So she said, why don't you just ring the number? And if it's not them, just put the phone down. So I did. And it was Ros Kirby answered the phone. And I asked her if that was the wife of, Jack Kirby, the comic man. And she said, yeah, I'll put him on. And then he came on. And I spoke to him for about an hour on the telephone. And I said to him, we're coming over soon. Can I come and see you? So he said, yeah. So I gave him my address and he sent me a letter with his address on it and his phone number and all this kind of stuff. And when I got there to California, rang him up and went over to see him. And the people that I was with, Bob and Suzanne, the Americans, they just dropped me off. They said, we'll come back in an hour. And I thought, there's no way I've come all this way to see this man and I'm going to spend an hour, I'm going to let him kick me out of the house, And anyway, when we got there, Ros had prepared lunch for us all. So we went in and had lunch with them. And I couldn't speak for about an hour because I was just looking at this guy. He's only really small, he's about 5'4".
Yeah, he's a really small guy.
Yeah, but he's a real powerhouse, And I couldn't speak, and he kept saying to me, "What's your name? Who are you again? Why are you here?" Just making fun. And anyway, we went through and we talked to him. We spent we were there about 6 or 7 hours on the first trip. I took a camcorder with me, but it didn't work. It malfunctioned, and I'd only got a few minutes from that visit. So the next time I went, a couple of years later, I got hopefully a camera that worked, and it did. And for all this time, I've had this this unique footage that nobody's ever seen. Even I hadn't seen it for 15 years because I just didn't look at it, Anyway, so I was going to put it on YouTube, and I thought, no, I'll try and produce something better than just putting up this whole movie. So I was interviewed professionally and all this kind of thing, and I put together this film, and that was released 2 years ago. 3 years ago, 2017, which was Jack's 100th birthday, or would have been. And we had a premiere in a place called Oldham near us in the library. They've got a big theatre there. We had 30 or 40 people there, specially invited. And it's been pretty good, It was really good to work on as well. And looking at the footage again. And Jack's, you'll love it because Jack's great. I went there with the intention of not interviewing him because I'd seen him speaking before, and he just likes to talk. So I didn't prepare questions as such. There were things I asked him and stuff like that, but I didn't prepare questions, and I just let him speak, and he did. And I've got there's about 45 minutes of it, and it's just fantastic. It's unique and everything. And the Kirby Museum have taken copies of it, and people have been interested in it, and But I decided that there was a production company who wanted to make something with it, but I just got the impression from the talks that I would lose control, and it wouldn't be what I wanted to do, because I've called it Jack Kirby, a personal journey, because it's about me more than about him. It's just about my journey to him. But then there's this 45 minutes of him talking in his studio and all this kind of thing. But it was really great to work on. Obviously great to be there and meet him twice,
Hey, Glenn, for the people who aren't like me and my co-host probably too, kind of tell like why Jack Kirby is Jack Kirby, like the characters that people would know that Kirby created.
Oh, well, how long have you got? Fantastic.
Oh, yeah, let's go.
Fantastic Four, Hulk. He was there at the beginning of Spider-Man, the Avengers, the Challenge of the Known, Captain America, Black Panther, you name it, and he's probably got his finger on it somewhere. Like I say, with Spider-Man, he drew the first few pages for Stan Lee, didn't he, Jimmy? Before they gave it to Steve Ditko, who did a fantastic job, obviously. But the initial idea was that I think it was a Kirby character called the Fly from the 50s that didn't go anywhere. And he brought that to Marvel offices and said, there's this guy, and they developed it. But Jack's pages apparently were, you see his drawings, he draws everybody like gods, and they're made out of granite, they're really tough guys, they're like him. And that wasn't the look that Stan Lee wanted, and so he gave it to Steve Ditko, who draws very fluid characters, and he's a great artist in his own right, Steve Ditko. But Kirby's he's created New Gods, Devil Dinosaur, 2001. Well, not 2001 the film, but he did an adaptation of that and then moved it into Machine Man, I think it was, and then he did the Eternals, which I think is the best unfinished piece, even more so than the New Gods, because he didn't finish that.
Yep, absolutely. No, those are all, and that's just, I wanted people to know. So I want to ask you this question, because I know what it is for me. As the journey, as a comic book fan, like you said at 10, you were just like, oh, wow, what is this? Like, I remember going into the local grocery store here. It was called Inez ShopRite, and I was a kid. And there was a book, and it was Firestorm. And I just remember seeing that book, and I was like, what is that? So I pick it up, and I'm a kid, and I start looking at these bright, red and yellow colors. And then my mom let me buy it, so I take it home and I read it. And then all of a sudden, I just fell in love with everything. Like Firestorm to this day is still one of my favorite characters. And he's probably a BC character, I guess as you would rank all the different characters. But when I saw that, it was like it affected something in me when I just saw it. And I think it was the art first, and then it was the storytelling second. So for you as a 10-year-old, like what was that for you? What Kirby book, what did you see?
Well, before that, just before I discovered Kirby, I was reading, have you heard of Jerry Anderson, Thunderbirds and things like that? Well, he produced a magazine. It was more of a magazine than a comic, called TV21. And the artwork in that by the great British artist, was painted artwork. And so they made the characters, the puppets, look like real people, And that just blew me away. And that was before I was 10. And then when I was 10, my brother came home with Strange Tales 136, which was the second episode of Nick Fury. Now, Kirby didn't draw that, but he did the layouts. And John Severin drew the actual issues. But in that comic, and I've still got that comic, the actual one from 1965, usually on page 4, I think it was, there were adverts for the other magazines. And there was an advert of 4 magazines, and there's Fantastic Four, Spider-Man, I think it was Marvel Collector's Item Classics or something, and Thor. So I said to my brother, because he's older than me and he had more money than I did, I said, you've got to get those. So he did. And it just went from there. And most of those are by Kirby. And it was just like, wow, who's this? What is this? And his artwork is so dynamic and comes at you through the page. And, and his storytelling is just, what it's all about, really. I mean, this is the thing with what was said about Stan Lee, and the way that Stan Lee's contribution to all that success was tremendous. But I think he was just the front man. And I know he put the dialogue on the pages, but those stories were already written when he got them, and he changed them about. And, because I always look at it like this: if you look at a film, the dialogue is the scenery. It tells you the guy is called Reed Richards or whatever he's called. And that's why the silent movies work, because you don't need the words, because the pictures, the sequential art tells you what's going on. And I'm presuming, Jimmy, that you've seen Kirby's pencil work, pages of his pencils, and you don't need any words on them. You don't need to know the guy's called Reed Richards. He's just this guy who stretches, do you understand what I mean? He's telling the story in the pictures. And what I'm saying is that even though you would get a different story with different people, us four could write a different story on those drawings, but the drawings would still say what they said. Do you understand what I mean?
Yes, sir.
The words are just the scenery, as far as I'm concerned. But Stanley's words were good. He was good at that. But the stories are already written for him.
So, I guess you said you were 17. You went to art school, and you started.
Yeah.
Before that, had you started your passion for drawing? Like, is that what sparked your passion for drawing? Is the storytelling in those comic books, like that you could figure out what was going on by looking at that art, and that you wanted to tell that story? I've
always drawn since I can remember. I've always been able to draw and do that. And when I got into we had comics like the Beano. I don't know whether you've seen those, Beano and Topper, and the quaint little British comic, they should go on this story. So when I got the American comic book and the 20 pages long, they had a chance to develop the whole story. And I used to look at the drawings before I read the captions, and I could tell what was going on and the way it moved. And then I started looking into how it worked and developing my own. And I started drawing my own comics. I've still got some from when I was 14 of characters that I created and wrote and drew about. But it's the whole, I just love drawing. I do portraits and, can you see that?
Yeah.
The guy, can you see that?
Mm-hmm.
That's one of my, from a story, a science fiction story that I'm working on. And I just like the storytelling aspect of it. And I mean, I'm not the best in the world by far, but there's some people out there who don't understand how it works, and they're getting more money than I do.
To me, because I'm somebody who's not artistic at all. I can't draw a stick man. You know what I'm saying? I'm good at it. But I got to tell you before we get much further, Bridget says hi. She's watching right now.
Bridget, yes, I was going to mention Bridget. Thanks for getting me on, Bridget. She's great.
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about the process of writing a comic book? Yeah. And like I guess I've always kind of wondered this, and I now got somebody I can actually ask. So is it, you've got the idea in your head, I guess, maybe you draw and then the story comes, or is it the story first and then you draw?
No, I want to take one step. Like, how's the ideal even maturation? What's the maturation process in your head, even for a story or character? Sorry, Jimmy, but
no, it's great.
Yeah,
I've always been able to come up with stories. You won't believe this, but I wrote my first book when I was 8, and when I say book, it was 20 pages in a. I don't know what you guys get, but we used to get what we used to call them exercise books, and there'd be just blank pages with lines in, just lines onto, like you do your English homework on it and things like that.
Workbook.
Yeah, and when we did our work in those at school, you'd be lucky to fill half a page, and I was only 8, and I wrote a book about Stingray, which was one of Jerry Anderson's shows. And it was 20 pages long, and I've not got it. I wish I had it now. It'd be rubbish, but I'd love to have it. But 20 pages for an 8-year-old, I think is pretty good going. So I've always had a flair for stories. And all I did was take his characters and wrote a story. So what you do is what you do when you're doing comics is you've got to have you can't, I mean, you're faced with a blank piece of paper. You can't just start drawing. You've got to know what you're doing. So you would come up. What I would do is do some roughs of characters and ideas. I'd get the plot and the story because it's two different things, and just plot it out. Sometimes I would do roughs, and I would rough them out, do very thumbnail sketches of the action, just so that you knew where you were going, and to pace the story and things like that, because you've got a finite amount of pages. And then you would, when you sort of straightened all that out and got that all ready, I would go to the proper art pages and then draw it, and then write the dialogue, and then hand letter it on the page, and then ink it, and then color it maybe.
Because there's a massive process when it comes to the art.
Sorry.
No, I was going to say there's a massive process when what I've seen is, like you just said, you would ink it, you would letter it, you would,
Yeah.
I mean, like there's all kinds of layers to what that finished product actually looks like.
Well, a friend of mine, we wrote a couple of stories back in the 80s that haven't been published. And he's a writer. He's a really, really good wordsmith, and I'm reasonably good at drawing. So we got together and drew these things. We've not published them yet. And we would talk about the story. We would make a plot, see what was going on, where it was going, what would happen. And then I would go away and draw the pages. And then I give them to Andrew, and he would dialogue them, and then, or at least, he'd write, panel 1, bubble A, and then he'd type it out, and then I'd letter that into the bubble and all that kind of thing. And then you get your brush out and start inking it all in, and then you get your other brushes out and color it in. It takes weeks. You see, to me, I can say this because I do both. It's easier to write than it is to draw. It's easier to write a 40-page story than it is to draw it.
I bet the writers disagree.
Well, that was the thing. Like I could always, that's what always amazed me about art, especially, art, comic book art, like how you can come with that out of your head, because I can draw. I can look at something and I can draw it, but I cannot take what's in my head and put it on a piece of paper. That is a gift to be able to do that.
I've got one. Last year, I wrote this book and published this book. And it's about my dad's story when he was a paratrooper on D-Day. And so I wrote a fictionalized story of what happened to him that day. And I also illustrated it. I don't know whether you can see.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
But I've got one here. And in the story, there's a sniper. So I did this.
Look at that.
Oh, wow.
That's the artwork.
That's wild.
It's amazing.
That's amazing. That's talent, man.
So I just thought, well, he's going to be hiding in the bushes, So, and the other, I'll just show you this one as well. This is the cover artwork.
Wow.
That's awesome.
That's
Yeah,
unreal.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's amazing to me that somebody can just do that.
Me too. And that's what I'm saying, JD, is like, it's just amazing because like Brad himself Brad's artistic, and Brad can take something in his head and get it out.
Yeah.
And it may be through woodwork or, whatever. But I could take something, like if I could take that picture and get it in front of me, I could draw it.
Yeah.
But to make that come out of my mind I think that is such a talent, such a gift.
Well, this is the thing that this might sound a bit big-headed, and it probably will, but I don't really care. People say if you practice long enough, you'll do it. Well, I've been singing for 65 years, and I still don't sound as good as Marvin Gaye. And he's been dead 30 years, so he was only, I don't know how old he was, 42 or something when he died. Do you understand what I mean? So you do need some kind of talent in there. And I get into endless debates about this.
So again, I'm sorry, guys. Brad, did you have a question?
Well, I was just curious, kind of what do you see as the future of comics? We've had basically the same characters for our entire lives, and I'm sure that this has changed drastically just in the internet age, where there's probably not as many, the paperback comics in circulation.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious, is there, what do you expect in the future? Do you expect the next Jack Kirby, the new character?
Well, I would always hope so, and I believe those people are out there. I think the talent is always out there, everywhere. But it depends on. There's so many things, so many hurdles you've got to get through to get anywhere these days. Because things, it's like, when you see Walt Disney films from, Fantasia from 1940 and things like that, and you think, wow, this is brilliant. This is the best. Well, apart from the fact that it was the only one, so it would be the best. It is the best. So Jack Kirby was producing Captain America around that time. And you see those comics then, and you see Superman. And Superman's, I prefer Marvel characters. I think Superman and Batman are very weak in the comics. Very weak characters. Sorry about that, but, you invited me on. It's, how can I put it? I think they're very weak. But by that, I mean that the people who were doing it are restrained a lot, and they have to hold back. And I think I could do a really good Batman, and he wouldn't be very nice because he shouldn't be. He's the opposite of Superman.
That needs to happen. I don't know that.
Superman's great, but Batman's not. He's not nice, and that's the way they should show it.
So have you ever, like you was talking about, like to find that 20-page book that you wrote when you was 8, and you think it would be rubbish?
Yeah.
But have you had that experience as a professional that you went back and 10 years ago you produced something, you was like, oh, that was garbage? Like, have you had that?
I did that this morning. So yeah, I think it would be okay. I can remember what happened in it, but I would just love to see the physical thing, but that's long gone. That probably went in the bin in 1965, something like that. Sure. 50 years ago, so 55.
Another question, I got a couple. You showed the picture of the plane in your book there, and the 8 seconds, and the sniper. Like, how do you research that? Like, you want to make sure the sniper's the right rifle that they was using on that time.
Exactly, yeah.
Vehicles and stuff like that. How do you do your research?
Well, that's where the internet comes in for me, because I've got several books on the stuff, but the internet is invaluable because you can go anywhere at any time with it. And so, yeah, it was vital that I get the rifles right and all the badges and all the stuff. And the internet is fantastic for research for me. I mean, I know what these things are. I could draw you a generic helicopter or a generic police car.
Right.
But if you want it to be accurate, you've got to get a picture of the real one, because there's all kinds of nuts and bolts going on in there that are unique to that thing.
Sure.
Helicopters look the same, but they're not. Cars look the same, but they're not.
Right.
But if it was really interesting researching my dad's book, because you know about it. You know about Bren guns and M1 rifles, and you pick that up from the films. But when you go on, you can go on YouTube, and there's a guy on there, and it's fascinating. He's got all these weapons and he's firing them, and he's showing you how they come apart and how many bullets they have in the magazine and stuff that you don't know. And I find that really fascinating. That's really interesting to find out. But to get the authenticity of the badges and the ranks and the German uniforms, and I mean, you see a film and you know it's a German uniform, don't you? But when you get into it, there's not a lot going on, and you need to get that on,
That's a great question, JD. I like that one.
That's what I do. I don't know if you know this. I'm humble too.
I can tell. All right, Glenn. So a couple of things. Like, what do you think? Like, there are a lot of people out there who, they split comic books up into the modern and the, of course, golden, silver, bronze. Is there a particular age of comic books? Obviously, with Kirby, that's probably going to be, kind of in your wheelhouse. But what do you think of like modern comics today?
I don't read them. I don't look at them, because when I was buying them, and I don't think I bought a comic book since Watchmen. When's that? 12 years ago?
12 years ago.
No, 30 years ago, isn't it?
Watchmen was, yeah. There was a Watchmen that came out not too long ago.
But... No. Think of something new. Ring me up. I've got lots of ideas. You know, this is the other thing about it, is the way that nobody seems to have any ideas. This is what I was saying to you about the talent. The talent is out there, but you can't get through the door because what they want something safe. And it's like with Disney. You notice Disney films come out every 7 years for the new generation. And I just watched, just before it came on, there was X-Men was on, X-Men Apocalypse. And I watched 10 minutes of it. And all it was the origin of them again. You know, Cyclops, he's got his things on and there's some guy cutting people's heads off or something. I don't know who he was. But it's like with Spider-Man. Is he called Tobey Maguire? He did Spider-Man, didn't he? In the Oz, right? The zeros, you know, 2004 or something. And it's okay. And then they get that Garfield guy, and it's the same. He has to have his origin again, and it's just the same story again. The Green Goblin's in it. Well, do something else. But don't change the Human Torch into a black man, because he's not. You know, this PC stuff. Then it just does me head in. So I don't read modern comics. So I'm a Silver Age person.
And you would blow your mind how many people out there really like that. Now, I still read comic books today just because I like them. I don't know. Brad tells me all the time he thinks it's because my life and my job is really busy, and it allows me an escape. But I also like to go back, you know, like I subscribe to, you know, the DC universe and the Marvel subscriptions where I can go back and read old comic books because I like to see where they come from. And then I try to buy, you know, old books, and I wouldn't even say they're for an investment because I'm one of those people who are anti-graders. I want to be able to read my comic book if I have it. So what do you think of people because there's a huge collector base out there, like, you know, what are you a grade person? Like, you know,
no. I wish I'd gotten that. If I speak to you again, I'll get that Strange Tales for you, and you can see it's really, really loved this comic, and it's really, really been read. It's falling apart. The pages are yellow. Have you seen those people who is it called? Put them in a slab.
Slab, yeah, that's what grading is. Yeah, they slab it.
What's the point of that? You've got Spider-Man #1. Which I know is worth a lot of money, which I had actually. My mother made me throw it away. Well, that's another story. I had Fantastic Four #1, Avengers. I had the whole run of Jack Kirby Fantastic Four to 102. Bin. Anyway, what's the point of having something and putting it in a plastic box for somebody else to have? What's the point? There's no point.
Oh yeah, there's a huge debate, guys, about whether you should do that. Like I'm not a slab guy. I like to have the books. I want to read them. Now there's some books that I think maybe should be preserved. You want to make sure that you have good copies of them and make sure you preserve them. But for the most part, I just want to read the story. So I guess you don't like the, you know, because one of the things that's really brought comics and you know, this art form, you know, to the forefront in the last 10, 15 years has been the Marvel movies. The Marvel movies have been a huge success through Disney. Are you anti those, or do you like those to keep it on the forefront?
Well, don't tell me, brother, but 5 years ago, I think it was, he bought me the trilogy, the Captain America trilogy thing with Chris Evans in a box set for my birthday. And I haven't opened it yet. The only thing I've seen from those 3 films is the elevator scene, which is pure Kirby. Kirby would love that.
Yes.
When he jumps out and he's doing his arms. It's fantastic. But I just can't watch it. I don't know what it is. I just can't watch them because I just see. One of the reasons I don't like the new comics is because when Jack Kirby used to draw a comic and Doctor Doom used to burst through the wall, the Fantastic Four were startled and in danger. But now, when he comes through the wall, somebody comes through the wall, Sue Storm's there with a bosom, you know, look at me, and it's just soft porn. If you ask me, it's just not. It's just not right. It's not right. I think I just wish they'd take it back a bit, just calm down a bit. I mean, I'll tell you one thing that really does irritate me is in these superhero films is when the guy lands, they've always got to do that stance when they land, haven't they? Like it's a bit of a. Oh,
I mean, look, I can't say anything when I dive into the swimming pool. When I stand up, I completely swing up like Superman, like I'm the guy. I'm not gonna lie. I told my sister that the other day. I'm so embarrassed.
But I don't have to see that.
Now, as far as those movies are concerned, like really, you ought to watch Winter Soldier because Captain America: Winter Soldier to me is one of the best. I mean, like it's not just a comic book movie; it is a fantastic. It's a social drama. Like it's really good.
Civil War, yeah.
And well, Civil War is good too. But as far as I think what he would like, just based on talking to him and Kirby-esque,
right?
Like very Kirby-esque,
yeah,
is Winter Soldier, and that's the second movie. And it's very Jack Kirby-ish. It is like I think you would actually like that
one. Right? Is that the one with the elevator scene? Is
that's the elevator scene? Yeah, that's the one.
Right, I'll watch it then. I'll break open that box and
yeah, and that way your brother's feelings won't be hurt. You can at least say, yeah,
I'll watch them back to back.
Yeah, no, they're and JD's right. Civil War is good, but Civil War is more. I don't know. You've got more of the superheroes themselves. They introduce a lot of the new people onto the screen, and like I'm a total comic book nerd. Like I love it all. Like I like the Silver Age. I like the modern stuff. Like I like it all. It doesn't matter what it is. Right. And that's my problem is I like everything. I have a hard time finding something, to really hone in on because I just love it all. Like right now I'm a big, for DC, Scott Snyder is probably my favorite writer. Him and Greg Capullo are doing something called DC Death Metal right now. But Capullo is a lot like Kirby too in the way that it draws. It's just very fierce. It's just very, and that speaks to me. And then on the Marvel side, you've got Donny Cates, who's doing Thor right now, also Venom. He's doing some others. That's very different and it's very new. Like what you were saying, like new ideas. It's very new. You got Cates and then Snyder's getting ready to step out and probably do some creator-owned stuff, kind of like McFarlane. But like, so there are some new writers. But you're right. A lot of it is just kind of overdone. They tell the origin story every 2 years. And you're right about that. That is something I'm looking. And I think there are people out there too. And identifying those for me, because I will buy books based on the art if I really like the way the art looks.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I'll read a book and I won't even read it first. I'll actually read the art. Like I'll go through, like you said, and I'll read the art, kind of really take it in because it's, a lot of that's just beautiful. And the different formats, the different ways that they do it. So,
well, I remember, Joe Sinnott, the inker who just died, Kirby's inker or Kirby's best inker. I remember reading an article with him saying that in the 60s when he used to get those Fantastic Fours and all those Kirby books through the post, he used to lose money because he used to sit for an hour and just look at the drawings. You know what I mean? He should have been inking them. He should have been working. And he just used to sit in his studio and think, my God, and he just see these things. Yeah. And I was always envious of Stan Lee and maybe Artie Simek, the letterer, because they'd see the pure pages. They'd see them from Kirby. Joe Sinnott, the lettering would be on, so there'd be some kind of distortion to it, So Stan Lee would see those pristine pages, and then Artie Simek or Sam Rosen would get them to letter. And that's another thing about the production of it. I have done computer lettering. It's easy, but I don't like it. I like it to be on the board. It's got to be part of the artwork, because there's a guy I know produces artwork, and it's beautiful artwork, but the lettering's not on it. So you get a piece of artwork off him and there's no lettering on it. But when you get the comic, the lettering's on it. And I prefer it if the lettering was directly on the board. That's the way I work, because it's an art in itself, that lettering.
It really is.
Artie Simek and Sam Rosen and John Constanza are just the best. And they do it right on the board, or they used to do it on the board. They might all be dead now.
So I got another question. I don't think I have as many questions. I'm sorry. Like when somebody, let's say somebody's got this comic book and they pass away, but that ideal doesn't die. So how they decide who takes over for that person? Like, like the Peanuts with Charles Schultz when he died, they give it to somebody else to run with. So how does that decide? Does the company, like does DC or Marvel, they get to decide, or does the author have a say so in who?
No, well, that's part of Kirby's problem, wasn't it? That who created it? Because
That's right.
So in other words, Marvel own it, or Disney own it now, don't they? But Marvel own it, and they will decide if somebody dies, they'll just get some other guy to do it. They don't really care, do they? As long as the book's out. So, and that was the contention with Kirby, that the characters were his, and that was Marvel's problem. They were worried that he was going to march down the road with these copyrights and get DC to print them,
Right.
And he created them all, but it was work for hire, and that's a very, very foggy situation. Work for hire. Who owns what? Right. And I remember reading, John Burns. John Byrne. We have a John Burns here. John Byrne, the Canadian guy. He wrote a good article in Comics Journal years ago about how he could see both sides, and I can see both. As a publisher, I can see both sides, because if I give you a job to do, you go and draw those 20 pages and you're done. I've got to print it. I've got to spend money on a printer, so I'm a couple of grand down, probably tens of thousands down with Marvel comic. Now, if it flops, the guy gets paid for doing the pages, but I've lost 10 grand. So I can see both sides of it. Is the artist willing to give back his paycheck if it doesn't work? Because he drew it. Right. It's not the printer's fault it failed. You see what I mean? No, and then about 10 years ago, 12 years ago, I published a British comics magazine called Crikey, which was about British comics. And what people didn't understand as the publisher, it was great getting the articles in off people, and they write better articles than I do. They know a lot more about the stuff than I do. But when they'd done, they might spend half a day on it. But when they gave it to me, and I went to the printer, as soon as he pressed that button, I was £3,000 down, and I've not sold one yet. I mean, there'll be subscriptions and things like that, and the shops were waiting for it. But do you understand what I mean? Absolutely. And that's what they don't seem to understand, and that's why the publisher gets most of the money, because the publisher deserves most of the money because they put money in. I know there's nothing more valuable than a person's time, but you can't eat time. You need money to buy food. And that guy was me. I was putting thousands of pounds in before anything came back. Do you understand what I mean? Mm-hmm. But I can see both sides of it, because being a publisher and an artist as well, and a writer as well.
And you see that a lot today, JD. There are a lot of people who are going to create their own. Now, the only one that's really worked is Spawn with McFarlane. That's probably the most successful creator-owned comic book. But you've got guys like I mentioned, Scott Snyder a minute ago. He's probably my favorite author, comic book author today. I just really like his stuff. He just did a big run on Justice League that was phenomenal. But he's moving away from DC's main titles and actually going out to some creator-owned stuff. He's working on something called Undiscovered Country right now that if they make a movie out of, will be sick. I mean, like, it's crazy. And it's new, like what you're talking about, like new ideas, and that Undiscovered Country is phenomenal. It's just so different. And they're talking about making a movie out of it. And I agree, actually, as far as that stuff goes. But no, JD, they'll pass them on, like Snyder just finished Justice League and it went to a new writer. Yeah. DC still owns it. He's off of it. And then they've got a new writer who carries on the vision. Batman just switched over, went through a run with Tom King that a lot of people didn't like. And now it's to James Tynion. And now it's like blown up again because there's all kinds of new characters. And so you've got a lot of that. And that makes it interesting.
It's easier for me as an artist and a writer. It's easier to work on my own creations, and that's what Kirby did. Everything Kirby did, he brought into the office. Stan Lee says he told him, but he didn't. You know what I mean? I mean, I think I don't know whether this is true or not, but there was a famous incident where Lee rang Kirby, and he was so impressed with the way the Fantastic Four was going. This would be around issue 48. And he said, have them meet God. Right? Now, that's the brief. Have them meet God. Now, think of how many million interpretations of that. What does Kirby do? He comes back with Galactus and the Silver Surfer.
Yep.
You know, so who created that? Kirby did, didn't he? Because
Yeah.
Stan Lee can't claim to have created God. And he said, have them meet God. So he comes in with Galactus. So,
and Kirby's hands are all over everything. Like that Thor series I was talking about with Donny Cates right now they just brought Galactus. Like they've brought that into it. You know, I mean, that whole thing, it's just, yeah. I said Kirby's hands are still all over these books, especially on the Marvel side. And I've been trying to get a copy of Forever Gods for a while because it's the book that it's basically where they introduce Darkseid. I mean, you know who Darkseid is, guys?
good.
It's basically like Thanos in Marvel. Darkseid is Thanos, you know, in DC. He's that guy, and that's the book. But that cover is sick, and it's a Kirby cover, and I love it. And I've been trying to get it forever, but it keeps going up in price, and I haven't been able to grab one that I'm willing to pay for yet.
Don't forget though that Darkseid is George Lucas, you know, Darth Vader.
Mm-hmm.
That's Darkseid.
Oh, really?
You've got in Star Wars, you've got the Force, and 5 years earlier in New Gods, you've got the Source. And it's not a new idea, but in 5 years earlier in New Gods, you've got the antagonist guys, the good guy and the bad guy, and they swap kids, don't they? So there's peace. They swap children. They swap their sons, and that's what it is in Star Wars. It's the son fighting the father and all that kind of thing. Because Orion in New Gods is supposed to be a good guy, and it's Darkseid's son. And there's all this. So George Lucas should give a big wink to Jack Kirby, I think. And
you're right. You're absolutely right.
And George Lucas says that one of his biggest influences was Jack Kirby, and you can see it on the screen. It's Kirby. It's New Gods. It's just all there. I think he's very. Hopefully, in time, everybody will know who he is, because I went into a gallery in Manchester a couple of years ago, and an art gallery, and there were these cover reprints as big as your door, massive reprints of these Marvel comics from the 60s. And you'll know, Jimmy, you know that Steranko cover of the Hulk where he's Jim Steranko cover of the Hulk when he's lifting the title?
Yep. Yeah. Yep.
I've got that. And on the side of it, it says Steranko. And I can tell it's his artwork as well. It's Jim Steranko. But when I went into the gallery, it said Stan Lee. And then there was a Captain America drawn by Jack Kirby. And it said Stan Lee. So when people go in, they think, wow, this Lee guy's brilliant. He's drawn all these. He didn't know what a pencil was. He hasn't drawn anything. And that's what Walt Disney did. He wouldn't allow the artist to sign the work. It was all Walt Disney. Everybody thinks Walt Disney did the drawings, and he didn't. 3 other people
didn't do any of it.
You know? So I think he did. Did he do the roughs for Steamboat Willie?
He did. He did the roughs for Steamboat Willie, but I think outside of that, that's really it.
When was that, 1924?
Yep.
He hasn't drawn anything since 1924.
So I got a hypothetical question, because it interests me. And I don't know. You don't seem like the sentimental type. You seem like the kind of guy who values something for the content of the magazine or the comic. So if you lose every comic you got, but you can keep one, which one are you keeping? New Gods #1 signed by Jack Kirby.
Yes, God, that would be so I'm like, no joke, trying to find one. I've been trying to find one for 2 years.
Well, I was there when he signed mine.
Oh my gosh. Look, can I be in your will? Like, will you leave that to me, please? I've been trying to find one forever, like a reasonable one, but that stuff's just priced out of this world. Oh my gosh.
You can't ask guests to be in their will, bro.
Why not? He's got a New Gods #1 signed by Jack Kirby. How many times you can get to ask the man? Just put me in your will. It's fine. I'm sorry, Glenn.
All right. It's all right. Yeah, I've got a few signed things from him, but that would be the one. Yeah, I didn't take as many as I should have. I should have took all of them, shouldn't I?
You really should have.
And just had him sit down for 3 hours, just sign his name on it.
Yeah, just sign all these, and we'll be good. No, I can't imagine sitting down with the guy. Like, I watched it was a documentary. It was something, and they were talking about. how Black Panther became Black Panther. And, the original drawings that Kirby made looked nothing like what Black Panther ended up being and how it kind of, evolved.
Cheers.
Cheers.
I didn't even pour me no bourbon. So I want to follow up with that question on, okay, so you decided, what was the name of the comic you said you was going to keep?
New Gods #1. So
you said you had other things signed by Jack Kirby, but why that comic? Is it because the content's so good or because the sentimental value? Like why would you keep that one?
I don't know. Good question. Probably because it was that series which was pivotal for the 70s, I think, and beyond. If it would have been Fantastic Four #1, I would have said that one, but I don't have that anymore.
Sure.
So
cool.
That's probably the best one I've got that he signed.
And guys, and I know that you all talked about this at the very beginning, but I couldn't hear anything. Like it was literally reverbing. The book that you held up that you're doing right now, I think it was can you hold that up again? Yeah, that's awesome. Where can you pick that up?
It's on Amazon.
Okay.
You can get it on Amazon.
Yeah, so we need to start plugging your stuff actually right now. I'm sure you've got Comics Unlimited, and that's a monthly thing that comes out, or how does this work?
So I don't understand.
Is that a magazine that comes out every week or every month, or what is that?
At the moment, it's bi-monthly.
Bi-monthly?
It's 100 pages, all in colour. And it's I think it's $11.99 or something like that. I'm not sure what it is, but it's 100 pages. It's bi-monthly at the moment. Hopefully it'll be monthly, but
what else do you want to plug? I know you did some JFK stuff that you want to plug, maybe the books, a couple of books that you wrote that people might be interested in.
Yeah, I went down there in 1978 to Dallas and had a look around and spoke to some people, and some people wouldn't speak to me and all this kind of stuff. I was there when the House Select Committee on Assassinations were there doing a reenactment of the second report after the Warren report, the first government report. So anyway, so I came back from there and I wrote. When I write my books, I don't write. I try and put a spin on things, and there are so many books about JFK. There are hundreds and hundreds, literally, about the JFK assassination, and all they do is, well, I say all they do, but they tell you how many bullets, from which way, who did this, where this was. Factual books, and they're very good. But I thought I don't want to write another one of those, so I wrote it. It's called The Two Faces of Lee Harvey Oswald, and I wrote it in the first person as Oswald, so he doesn't know 90% of what's going on. It's just his thoughts, and I thought that could be I'm biased. It could be a really good film because you got things like Oliver Stone, and he's showing you what happened. Well, Oswald knew what was going to happen, but he wouldn't know all the details. We would know more details about what happened than he did because he's dodging and getting away and stuff like that. So I always try and put a spin on when I write. I wrote a book about football, soccer to you, about the World Cup. And I didn't just write a book about the World Cup. I wrote about 10 players who wore the number 10 shirts, right? Because that's like the shirt to wear in football. And I try and spin things and try and make it more interesting. So, but with the JFK stuff, I wrote 2 books. I wrote The Two Faces of Lee Harvey Oswald, which is, like I said, is about his point of view, which nobody knows because we're not him. But I just got the information. And then I wrote another one, which was more factual, called S172, which was his FBI informant number, because he was working for the FBI. And it's got all that sort of stuff, and he defected to the Soviet Union and all this kind of stuff. That's all about that. And then in the 90s, I published a magazine called Undercover, which covered all that kind of stuff like UFOs and, CIA and all that dark stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I don't do that now. I've finished with that.
So is this what you've got going on now? So where can people find you? Like if they was looking for Glenn Fleming, they want to purchase your stuff? You said Amazon. I know you mentioned Amazon already.
Yeah, all my books. There's about 10 of them, I think. I write different things. I've written a children's book, written and drawn a children's book. I've got that here somewhere. You're going to see it. This one. Right.
Cool. Yeah.
That's so you can see it now. So that's for kids.
Yeah.
And then I've written 2 science fiction books that are on Amazon as well. I'm halfway through another one. I've got this one. This is the latest one. This is from Easter Island. I went to Easter Island, Rapa Nui.
Nice.
And that's 200 pages, and it's got all my photographs in it.
Oh, wow.
Nice.
And what I did was, again, I put a different slant on it. I didn't write about Easter Island so much. I wrote about me. So, because when I went there, I shot 1,000 photographs and 6 hours of film, and I was going to produce a DVD with the book, but that didn't happen. But what I did, I wrote an extensive diary while I was there, and so I'd mixed my diary and my thoughts with stuff about Easter Island, and it's on Amazon, 200 pages, got all the pictures. Look at that. You see it?
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a whole other art form in itself, photography. I said in the way that works. I said that's
yeah, and I also designed the book. That's what I do. So I just everything. It's all me.
That's awesome.
Awesome.
There's some of the photographs, even though I say it myself, it's nothing to do with me. It's to do with God and the camera. It's just a fantastic place. Weird, very strange place, but if you can get there, I'd say go. It's the remotest place on Earth, inhabited place on Earth. That's it's in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. I think you've got Chile to the east, 2,500 miles, and Pitcairn to the west, 2,000 miles. It's 7 miles long. The island. It's nothing, but it's really a strange place. All those moai there, those statues. There's 800 of those. It's weird. When you see them, you think, what the hell is, well, but you think, what the hell is that? And you think, wow, it's fantastic.
So guys, we're out of time. I've had a flipping ball. This has been one of my favorites. Glenn, I really appreciate you coming on, but this is really, outside of, this is my love, comic books, I love it. And I always have. I was like you, I kind of had a period of time where I went away, was in college and things like that. It was really more broke than anything.
Yeah.
And then kind of came back to it after, I immediately went back once I had some money that I could, buy them again. So, but I've had an absolute ball. Guys, you got any other questions for Glenn before we wrap it up, or make fun of me if you want?
Well, always time for that. But I was going to say, I've never read a comic book in my life, but like Glenn's got me pumped up to read one.
That's what Bob said to Jack when I went up with Bob the second time to do the film, and Bob said to Jack, I've never read a comic book in my life, and Jack Kirby just looked at him, he couldn't believe it. They had never read a comic book in his life. I don't believe it.
Where can our listeners find the documentary about Jack Kirby?
From me. It's on. I was trying to get it onto Amazon Prime, but again, they want $2,000 to look at it before they put it on.
Before they even put it on, wow.
So they get it from me on a DVD, but I am doing a final cut version. So because I found some more footage and I've got other things that I put on. So there's going to be 2 versions. So if you want to get both, then get them from me.
And Glenn, just so that you know, my last name is spelled Kerr. If you decide you want to put me in your wheel, that's fine. New God's #1 sign.
Is that Carr or Kerr?
It's Kerr.
Kerr. Right.
Kerr. Yes, sir.
Kerr.
I'm not trying to get in your wheel, but now I will say that Bridget said that, Glenn, you need to sign the boys a comic book. I'm not opposed to that. I will take a comic book.
Right.
Well, I've had a ball, man. Honestly, Glenn, thank you for coming on. I've really enjoyed the hour. It's been great. So go check Glenn out. Check out his stuff. Obviously, you've got to see, some examples of it here on the show tonight, and support him. And we appreciate him coming on and sitting down and chatting with us. So as always, you can catch us, of course, here on YouTube, Facebook. Yes, JD.
Glenn's got something else. You got something
I'm sorry, Glenn. Go ahead.
I thought he had. Okay, sorry.
Okay, that's all right. So as I was saying, you can catch us on YouTube. Obviously, you can download our podcast from iTunes, Podbean, Spotify. Of course, we're on all the social media channels.
Right, yeah.
And as we always end our show, from myself, from JD, from Brad, and today Glenn, no matter how bad your week's been, no matter how bad your day's going, if you just add bourbon, it always gets a little bit better.
I'll add some red wine.
Or red wine today with Glenn. Thanks, guys. We'll talk to y'all later this week.
Thanks very much. Appreciate it. Thanks a lot.